Welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast with your host, Helen Fritsch. Helen is a 60-plus lifelong competitive athlete, flight attendant, published fitness model, writer, IFBB bodybuilding pro, and certified wine specialist who believes that your age is irrelevant to pursue goals, dreams, and desires. Are you a woman in her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who still has a burning desire to pursue a dream or a passion? Are you thinking about starting a new chapter in your life, but you're hesitant, thinking that you might be too old or just don't know where to begin? The Age is Irrelevant podcast is a podcast devoted to women who want to defy the odds, smash barriers, and redefine happiness and success after 40. It's time to make a difference. There is no need to dread blowing out that added birthday candle every year. A new movement is slowly taking momentum, where being over the hill just isn't relevant anymore. Age labels are being thrown out the window, and women are rediscovering the strength within themselves to make a difference, not only within their own lives, but also touching and inspiring the lives of other women. Join Helen as she and her guests discuss all aspects of aging after 40 and how to make the aging process and those twilight years more rewarding, exciting, and fun.
Hello, and welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast. I'm your host, Helen Fritsch, and this is episode number 68. Now, today I am interviewing 53-year-old facial intelligence expert, Michelle Butt. Michelle is the owner of At Face Value, and she uses facial intelligence and holistic life coaching techniques to take her clients through their emotional, mental, and personality patterns and how to reconcile life experiences and decisions to change the trajectory of their circumstances. She coaches consultants and salespeople and other coaches and leaders and helps them with their one-on-one sales calls using the FAST, facial acuity selling tactic method. And I have to say it was a fascinating discussion because I'm sure all of us go through every single day walking into a store or walking into work and seeing new people for the first time. And just by looking at them and their facial expressions and their body language, exactly what kind of encounter we're going to have with them. Wouldn't it be fascinating if we were able to learn these techniques and then know exactly what to expect when we get into a group situation or a one-on-one situation like that? And wouldn't it be amazing if the leaders of the world would do this also? I think about how much conflict would be avoided. Anyway, I think you will thoroughly enjoy this conversation that Michelle and I had. And without further ado, here we go. Hope you enjoy. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Helen. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so tickled to have you. Actually, I've never had anybody like you on my show before, and I think it's going to be a super fun conversation because this is quite the fascinating topic. And for my listeners, I am talking to Michelle Butt. Now, Michelle has studied human behavior and facial nuances for over 10 years now and has developed the facial intelligence body of work. She assists her clients with removing the barriers that they have to living their most prosperous lives. And she uses this by using ancient wisdom and modern day strategies. She helps coach. She's a consultant, and she works with people, companies, leaders, doing all kinds of things through her FAST, F-A-S-T, facial acuity selling tactic method. And she lives in Ontario, Canada. And she is also a master coach and a facial intelligence expert. So at the end of this call, if you all are interested in finding out the real scoop behind that pretty mug that when you look into the mirror, I said, we need to definitely give Michelle a ring. So without further ado, hi, Michelle, again. Welcome to the show. I normally like to start off my conversations with starting from the beginning, and I just like hearing about your childhood and what that was like growing up. So let's just start from there.
Okay. Well, I'm the oldest of two girls in my family. And I kind of grew up in a time when, so my parents came from South America to Canada when I was two. So I grew up in a place where my parents were just getting to understand this new country that had winter um, and and snow, and they were really wonderful parents. However, they were very cautious because we're immigrants in this new land, and my parents were very old school. Very Catholic upbringing that I had. So I know you're there too.
I can relate to all that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they were very strict, and they had this. My parents would use this saying, and I'm sure you're familiar with: "Children are seen and not heard." Have you heard of that?
Oh, yes.
So I grew up kind of as a people watcher. So I feel like it's not an accident that I ended up in doing the work that I do, because I always had to I was kind of the wallflower anyway. So I would be observing when it would be a good time to be heard. So I got really good at reading the room and reading people in the room. And I didn't realize that until I came to do what I do now, that, this fascination and this ability started when I was a kid, just based on circumstance and kind of the nature of my face and how I'm designed. So I kind of stayed in the background for a lot of my childhood. And then I ended up going to an all-girls Catholic high school because that's what you had to do, because that's what my parents wanted us to do. And from there, I went on to university, and I started out in sciences and hated it. And I ended up finding a friend in one of my classes, in my physics class, actually, who said, I hate this stuff too, but the only thing that is making any sense to me is my linguistics class. And I remembered that. And so second year, I decided, okay, I'm going to try out this linguistics thing and see what she's talking about. And I loved it. I just found my place. So I ended up getting my degree in linguistics, and that really is just understanding language and how we talk and how we connect with each other. It's very verbal, but I think as a child, I was kind of looking at the nonverbal, and then the linguistics just connected the fascination of how we use language to relate to each other. And so that ended up getting me into working at a communications company. And then I got married, had 4 kids, and ended up staying home.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And when I got married, just after my son was born, he's my little guy, not so little anymore, but things in the relationship started to be as kind of rocky, and I couldn't figure out why. And by then I had decided that I wasn't going to go back to work corporately. So I started taking coaching courses and decided, people come to me for advice all the time. In the work that I was doing, it was communication work. I can extend that into a coaching practice that I can make my own hours in. And in doing that, I decided, okay, when I started working with clients, my clients would leave. They'd go through the whole protocol that I was taught, and then they'd go away, and maybe a month or so later they'd come back and they'd still have the same problem. And in my marriage, we were having problems. And I said, there's got to be more. There's got to be a way to see what people aren't saying out loud that can help me understand how to help them and how to fix whatever might be fixed over here in the marriage. And so I went to Chapters, which is the bookstore here, and I wandered around and I found this book on face reading. And when I looked at it, I thought, oh, this is interesting. And then I walked away, and there was that little voice in my head who said, no, you need to take that book home with you. And when I went home with the book. I finished it cover to cover in 2 days. And I said, this is my missing piece. And so I found the woman who wrote that book, and I studied with her for 2 years back and forth to understand what faces really meant. And then I melded all of that with my linguistics and body language training. And that's how facial intelligence was born. Yeah.
To me, that's fascinating, because how many times every day that you have encounters with people, and instantly you know if it's going to be a good encounter or a bad encounter, or especially with me being a flight attendant, and I'm reading, we are always watching everyone who comes on board, and you can look at somebody and go, oh, here we go. Just from their facial expressions, from their body expressions, so that's just fascinating.
Yeah. The thing is, as human beings, we all unconsciously read people, and we unconsciously read faces. But when you can get more conscious and strategic about it, then you can connect differently, or you can understand those potential interactions and where they can go really right or where they can go really wrong. And what I loved about face reading from the perspective that I approach it from is that we're looking at features and markings and wrinkles on the face to understand somebody's innate personality set points, but also how they habitually do the world, how they think, what kind of life experiences they may have had, what their face is telling us about the story of who that person is, not just, oh, are they mad? Are they sad? Are they being deceitful? It's much more about getting to know that person on a really visceral level.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for me, I think facial expressions are definitely the universal language of emotion. And so I would like to dig deeper into that, just because, when you deal with a new client, or if you're out, you're not even working, and you walk into a room, or you go over to a friend's house and you're there for a party. I mean, how do you now, as a facial intelligence expert, how do you read a room like that when you first walk in? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, so in facial intelligence, really, there's kind of 5 personality faces or archetypes, I like to say. And so certain features work in combination with other features to tell you who that person may be. So, for example, if someone has bright, sparkly eyes and dimples and, red hair or curly hair, then they are a captivator type personality. So they're bubbly, and they're most likely going to be the most friendly one, and they're going to come up and scream, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here, and give you a big hug. And they're going to be really outgoing. And, but you may have somebody else who has more of a face like mine, which is, a kind of a chin that's prominent, a bit of a domed forehead, ears that you can't see, but that are significant. And that person's more of a sage. So they're more withdrawn, and they tend to, be that person who sits in the background and waits for someone to approach them. And they might seem more mysterious because they're not engaging, but they have this air about them that you want to go and say, tell me about yourself. And so these 5 different facial feature combinations can give you an idea of what kind of person that person may be. And so, if you're kind of shy, then go talk to the captivator in the room, because they're going to be the one that's going to go around and introduce you to everybody. If somebody with nice, round, full features, they're going to be the one who's going to, bring a cake to the party and want to hug you and tell you their story and make you a cup of tea. So all of these things, you can get an idea of who somebody is based on how their features are created on their face. And you can do this when you walk into a room, but you can also do it when you look at a picture of them on Facebook and get an idea as to what kind of personality that person has just from what their features say in their pictures.
And I would think that if more people became more aware of this and took a more vested interest in this, that would help immensely, conversation-wise, or just being in a group, or especially even with conflict. I would think, if you're dealing with something, and then all of a sudden you have two opposing opinions, and then all of a sudden people start getting in a heated discussion. I would think that if you had any knowledge prior to this elevating to a bad level, that it could have been averted, because you know exactly what type of person that you're dealing with, and you could squash that before it just took off.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I often talk about, especially when I'm first introducing this work to people, is, one thing that we can see on everybody's face is their eyebrows. And eyebrows tell us lots and lots of things about people, but one of the things they tell us is how somebody makes decisions. And oftentimes when you can see the way somebody may approach a problem differently than you can, then you can frame your responses in different ways. So, for example, if someone has just straight eyebrows, then they're really logical, and they need to see the ABC, all the steps, before they'll say yes to something. If someone has curved eyebrows, which I think yours are a little bit curved, right? They're rounded. I can see them there. Mm-hmm. So this is really someone who takes a people-centered approach to their decision making. So, they're logical, but they think, okay, if I do this, will this be good for everybody? And that's kind of their last line of defense before they say yes. And so oftentimes in conflict, if you can just look at somebody's eyebrows and then know, oh, okay, she's not saying yes because I haven't told her that this is how this is going to be good for her family, or how this is going to be good for her friends. That's why she's not saying yes. Or if you're trying to say to someone with very straight eyebrows, well, this will help all the passengers, sir. They don't care about that. They're just like, okay, how does it help me? What's in it for me? A, B, C, D. Okay, right? And so that little distinction can change the course of conversations.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think we need to have all the political leaders of the world start taking a class in facial intelligence, just because I think this would avert a lot of issues.
Yeah. And what I love about it is that on many levels it's proactive, because with like body language and micro expressions, you can pick up if someone has a flash of anger, or if they have a flash of joy or surprise or whatever. But by the time you pick it up, the emotion is already passed, the damage is already done. Or so with this work, you can kind of proactively see how to approach something so that you don't get the reaction you don't want to get. So there's this level of precursor work that this allows you to do in conversation and connections.
This would be great for my job too.
Sure.
Especially today with all the pandemic and all the mask, issues on an airplane. That's unbelievable. And now that we're speaking about that too, so now with everybody, wearing masks, that probably really takes a lot out of being able to see the entire facial feature and trying to get a read on people.
Yeah, there is a lot of information that you can glean from the part of the face that we see, the eyes, the eyebrows. However, what's, kind of ironic to me by wearing masks is that one of the big features that you cover is the mouth. And the mouth is the unconscious caregiver language gauge. So if someone has a nice full mouth, they innately speak the language of caregiver, of taking care of others, or understanding compassion, or being sensitive to the needs of others. And yet that's the part that we cover. So we can no longer see and yet we're saying, oh, do this because you care about other people and you care about yourself. And yet we're covering the part of the face that really shows who that person is from a caregiver perspective. And also, based on the wrinkles that may show up on that part of the face, we are covering our ability to see if someone needs our care more because of the way they feel about themselves, or because they haven't had self-care or someone taking care of them. And we don't get to see that anymore. So our ability to unconsciously feel compassion and behave more warmly towards someone based on what we see from the mouth area of their face is hindered. And that's the most unfortunate part of mask mandates to me.
Right. And also, too, I didn't realize this, and I'm just speaking on a personal level, that when I'm on the airplane and I'm asking people what they would like to drink, I realize now how much I was reading their lips, basically. And just because people would say they would want a Coke or a Sprite or, water, and I could just watch them mouth it, and then I would know. Whereas now I really have to hone in on my hearing. And then, of course, the mask is, I'm being muffled, they're being muffled. And a lot of times we're saying, pardon me, or can you repeat that? And then they're getting frustrated, or I'm getting frustrated, and they're taking off their mask and saying, I want a glass of water. So I can just see how, that's another thing with as far as masks are concerned. So what are, especially now too, with the pandemic going on and with this mask, what are some facial cues that we should be looking for, considering that half of our face is covered up, as far as going out into the public, going to the grocery store? I mean, for example, yesterday I decided I wanted a coffee, and I pulled into Starbucks, and the parking lot was fairly open, but I just saw the spot, and it was sitting next to a SUV. And so I pull in, and I had to stop because this gal had her car door open. And so I patiently sat there for 10 or 15 seconds. Then I thought, okay, I kind of lightly honked my horn. And so she grabbed the door and closed it. And then when I pulled in, I looked over to wave to her and thank her and smile. And she's looking at me, and her hands are, flailing. And she's looking at me, and she's mouthing stuff, and she gives me the finger, and she goes like this. And look, you had all these other spaces, and you have to park next to me. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, you're right. There was so many other places, but I just pulled into the first spot I saw. And, she was just on her phone, but I just was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I just thought, okay, I went, sorry, and I just thought, I'm not the way how crazy things are today. I just thought, I'm not going to elevate this. I'm not going to get into an argument with her. I just got out of the car and walked into Starbucks. I thought, okay. So are there any things that we can look at as far as people being, have their face covered up now, as far as facial cues as to what we might expect with, different eyebrow raising or eye squinting or anything like that, some social cues or facial cues that we can, positives and negatives, that we might be able to identify with?
Yeah, usually when we're looking to see if someone's happy with us or displeased with us, we look at their mouth to see if we can see a smile or not. But you can always see a genuine smile in the eyes. And so when you're looking, are those eyes crinkling? Do you see those, what we call here crow's feet, but in face reading we call joy lines? Are those showing up? Because if those are, then you know that person is open and receptive. If they, narrow their eyes, then they're withholding their potential connection. So, one of the things that we are able to see when we can see a whole face is, there's a light that can show up that will say, oh, this person is open to me approaching them or to communication. But if you can't see the whole face, you can still see that in the eyes. So if someone holds their eyes naturally wide or open, so, you see more of the whole eye area, then that's someone who's more open-hearted in general, they're open to communication, which means they're open to sharing and they're open to receiving. And so you can still see that. And if people are happy to see you, then they'll tend to open up their eyes a little bit more wide because they're saying, here, yeah, come talk to me, let's connect. But if people start to narrow their eyes, or if people have naturally more narrow eyes and you can't see how open they are from their mouth or dimples or anything else that may be covered, then it would be good to know that in general, someone who has more narrow eyes is one who is going to be take more time to be open to communication. They're going to need to trust a little bit first. They're not going to be the ones who are going to share everything about themselves within half an hour of meeting you. It may take 2 or 3 or 4 encounters before they open up, because in general, they're guarding their heart. Potentially they've had some kind of heartbreak or betrayal, or they're emotionally a little bit more fragile. So they need more time to trust. And knowing those subtle things can be the difference between, coming on too strong or making assumptions that, oh, well, he didn't give me all of this information, so he's not interested in connecting with me, or he doesn't want to do business with me. But it just may be that person needs more time, more information, more trust before they open up.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And what about when a company approaches you? I mean, it looks like from your bio that you definitely go into companies and you discuss this with them. So when a company reaches out to you, what is their intention? Like, what do they hope for you to bring to the table to help their employees?
Most of the time it has to do with team building and connecting, or sales. So, when leaders are trying to make better connections with their employees, or want to know how to motivate them, or get the best out of them, then learning how to read a face and somebody's personality archetype from the face can really help you to put that person in the best possible roles that will enhance their performance and keep them happy. And then from a sales perspective, this work is golden in terms of how to connect and communicate with, the eyebrow things I've shared, the open eyes, knowing what's important to a potential buyer. If they've got those round eyebrows, you really have to talk about family and culture, not just bottom line and, deliverables. And so that type of thing is what I tend to share when I'm working with companies.
I see. And if someone, comes to you and wants help from you, what exactly, how do you take them as far as a course situation? Is it just facial features? I'm guessing that it's probably like a whole mind-body connection type thing. And even like, body awareness and body language too. I think it all works. It comes together as one thing.
Yeah. So when I'm teaching, most of the time when I teach the work these days, I'm teaching entrepreneurs who are coaches, therapists, that kind of thing, because they want to use the work with their clients to help transform. So in the same way that I kind of said in the beginning, I couldn't see what was going on a deeper level with that person, but once I could read their face, I could see it. So really the face tells us 3 important things. It tells us kind of that personality, habitual, behavioral set point that I've been talking about. It also tells us time of life. So there's a spot on the face for age 1 to 100. So you can look at different features, or if there's a scar or a marking somewhere, and connect the dots to that person's life at the age that they got the marking or the scar, and where they are at the age that it marks on the face, to see if there's some life experience or learning that needs to be done there. And the face also is an indication of potential health ailments. So if you're in the healthcare field, learning that, which I don't do so much, but I do have knowledge of it, that's kind of where the work began as a way to try to diagnose health issues by seeing changes in the composition of the features or the coloring of the face. And building upon that, what they found is they were trying to catalog the face as a reference to connection to body and organs and acupuncture points, et cetera. There was this predictability in the nature of how people behaved that they could map to the features and changes as well.
I see. You also talk about you do this through ancient wisdom and then modern day strategies. So let's talk about some ancient wisdom, because actually way back when, I don't know how many years ago this goes, but I'm really, really intrigued by that as far as how people would practice this hundreds or thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, the work actually began in ancient China, and it was when you went to a healer to say, okay, well, you know what, I'm not feeling well for whatever reason. They couldn't touch you because that was kind of not in their social norms. So they would look for changes in your features that might indicate what was going on inside of your body. And that they mapped that, like I said. So for example, the under eye area is mapped to the kidney, and, eyebrows, jaw, that's kind of mapped to the liver. So any changes there that might be potential issues that have to do with that organ. And based on that, the acupuncture points were all designed and created and mapped out. But when they started to do that work, they would find, oh, well, look, everyone who has straight eyebrows, they're really logical. Everyone who has and so that was kind of where the work began. At the time, it was health, and it was kind of superstitious. So, if you had a nice plump face, that meant that you were well fed and you had a good community around you. So that gave you a lucky face. And so that might be a family you might want to marry into or something like that. We have different concepts of that now. So my work has always been to take that ancient wisdom and then apply it to our modern day time. So that's where the linguistics and the body language comes in. What the Chinese knew about how our faces are designed and what they tell us about ourselves, how can we look at that today? So now a full face is someone who's nurturing. If you're a caregiver, then that means you care for other people. So that's going to be reciprocated potentially. And so in that sense, you have a lucky face in quotation marks, but for a modern day life, it is about speaking that caregiver language and being other-centered, and you can recognize that in someone's face. So you're going to look at your best friend who has the round face when you've had a really hard day, and you're going to call her up and say, can I come over and have some tea? And she'll be like, yes, and hug you and listen to your story. You might not call your husband who has the chiseled jaw, who just wants to solve the problem, and you don't need the problem solved. You just want to talk about it and let it go. And so, being able to understand what different faces tell us allows us to then but leverage different needs for different things, and not put all your, I often find that in relationships, even, we put all of our things on our partner. They should be the caregiver and, the problem solver and the fun person and the breadwinner and, but if they're not designed caregiver wise, that's why we have best friends. So they let us cry and talk it over. And then we go home and we say to our husbands, okay, I have a problem. Can you help me solve it now? And then they can do what's in their zone of excellence and their expertise based on their facial design. And so that is how I like to move that ancient wisdom into our modern day times.
Think about how many relationships would be saved if they realized this, right? Instead of coming in on their husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, and like nagging them to death versus realizing or understanding that that's just not in their realm and that you need to go elsewhere to vent and then come back and, solve. I think that's amazing. That's really, really interesting.
And it's really interesting too, because I've had clients like that. And she's like, but every time I come to him and I just want to talk about it, he wants to solve it. And I don't. And when we were able to kind of say, that's not how he's designed, the relationship completely changed. And because, we all can learn how to do certain things, but we're innately good at other things. And so, let people do what they're innately good at from a face perspective and find others to fill in the gaps.
Well, are there any examples that you'd like to share about maybe some clients that have come in and then actually taken all this into account and then turned things around? Any specific situations that you could mention? Just, in general?
I think, especially for your audience, one of the stories that I've always found really, really profound is, in our society here in the Western world, we look at wrinkles as signs of aging and, things that need to be filled in and 1,000 creams over, et cetera. But from a facial intelligence perspective, wrinkles are a few things, but the ones that we tend to look at that we want to get rid of are, they are signs of our emotional patterns and just how long we've been in that emotional pattern. So, of course, the longer you live, the longer you'll be in a pattern potentially. And so usually wrinkles show up when we make expressions that cause our face to move in a certain place. Mm-hmm. And if you make the same expression over time and, you're not 20 anymore, you're 50, 60, whatever, then that expression is eventually going to carve a line into your face to say, okay, every time you think about your mother or your ex-husband or something, you turn down the side of your mouth and you realize how disappointed you are in that relationship or how much you have to do. Or, this is one of those things that I was talking about with that we can't see anymore when we wear masks. And those lines are indicative of being in a pattern of, for example, the ones that go down on the sides of the mouth, which make people look like they're frowning all the time, but they're not frowning.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Sorry, my Siri is thinking I'm talking to her. But so when those show up, that's a pattern of, people don't see me, or I have to do everything, or I really wasn't nurtured as much as I could have been by my mother as a child. No one taught me how to be a caregiver, or I care too much and I do everything, so I can't rely on other people, or I don't take enough self-care. I care more for others. I'm a big giver, but I'm not a really good receiver. And, society would say, oh, just fill that in, go ahead. But that's never a permanent solution because you still keep thinking the thoughts and making the face. So it's going to come back eventually. But when you understand what that is, what those wrinkles are saying about how you're thinking and feeling, not that it's because you're now over 40, then you can start to say, oh, okay, maybe I need to reconcile my relationship with my mother. Maybe I need to ask for help more. Maybe I need to take more time for self-care. And when you start shifting that energy and doing that work, then there's no need to make the disappointed face anymore. So you stop making the face, and then eventually you start potentially smiling more. And so the muscles of your face start learning a new pattern and the wrinkles can fade. And I saw that with a client I had a few years ago. She had wrinkles around her mouth, had a very tumultuous relationship with her mother. And she had told me at the beginning of our time together, oh, I fill these in. I don't know what product she was using. And she was, but I want to stop doing that. And she was, but they keep coming back. And I said, okay, well, let's figure this out. And so a lot of it had come from this relationship that she needed to reconcile with her mother and then feel good enough and nurture herself. And since we did that work, then I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months later, I said, "Oh, did you get a new treatment?" And she said, "No, I've not filled these in again." And they just didn't come back.
Oh,
So, mm-hmm.
Interesting. Very interesting. What advice do you have for people who are looking to improve their lifestyle or their health if they come to you? I mean, if someone comes to you because of a specific issue, do you actually, I mean, I'm sure you probably look at you look at the entire circumference of their being and what, their everyday lives are. But I would think sometime this would just overlap into, they're coming to you for something specific, and then all of a sudden you kind of have a tendency to maybe go into a different plane and think, okay, well, not only this is going on, but this is going to affect your lifestyle in this direction or your health in this direction. So I think the benefits of this facial recognition, as far as understanding how we operate ourselves, if we can understand this, I think that would probably help other aspects and areas of our lives too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, especially because we're all designed differently. And, there are these kind of 5 archetypal signatures, but everyone has every feature. So everyone's face is so unique. So our combination of what we need and how we move through the world is unique. And yet, we tend to have similar problems. And so it's what I love about the work that I do when I do get to coach people one-on-one is saying, okay, you may have this problem that everybody else has, but the solution for you is going to be very unique. So, for example, if somebody comes and they're unhappy with their body and the way they feel about it, I have to look at what their face says about them. And if they have a nurturer face, so in general, they have a full face, then for them, they are always overgiving. And so when they're overgiving, because that's kind of the state of a nurturer, they're going to most likely put themselves last. And so then their ability to take time to take care of themselves or to make time for themselves may be diminished because of that personality archetype. The other thing is that nurturers need to receive as well. They need to receive gratitude. They need to receive appreciation. And if they're not getting that, they're going to feed themselves in some other way. And potentially that's food for comfort. But if they could understand that, oh, I need to be fed with things that feed my soul, but I'm feeding my body instead, then we can help them to set up a place where the people in their lives give them appreciation, give them time, let them tell their story. And then they don't need to compensate with more food. And, a nurturer, for example, needs community. And, I'm getting goosebumps. So this is really important for somebody who's listening is that, they're not always going to be the ones who are going to go jogging by themselves or they need a community. So if they can have buddies to work out with, or then they'll show up for the community. And in showing up for the community, they show up for themselves. And so even, in teaching people how to train to get a result from their body or from their mind, understanding their emotional set point by their facial archetype can help you give them the support they need or the tactics that they need that resonate with their design so that they can say, yes, I can do that.
That is so relevant, especially today, because I started this podcast because I compete in bodybuilding shows and I didn't start competing till my late 50s. And then when I turned 60, on my 60th birthday, I won a big national show and I turned pro. And I started having all these women reach out to me and say, well, how did you do that? How did you do that? And I was like, well, you can do it. I mean, age is irrelevant. I mean, anybody can do anything that they want. I mean, why are you putting restrictions on your age? Because, I'm too old for that. I'm like, no, you're not. And so then I decided I have to start a podcast. I have to find women who are defying the odds and who are rebranding and redefining the terms old age and over the hill. And my guests have been amazing, but I think what's so great about now is that society in general is recognizing and really holding homage and really, I mean, I'm seeing women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s on magazine covers now, and they're not perfectly coiffed, and they do have wrinkles, and they are a little pudgy, around their stomach. And I'm like, hip, hip, hooray. I mean, finally, we're being recognized. And for me, it's all about community. I mean, it's all about, like, I love my bodybuilding community, just like if, you're involved in some type of sport or some type of passion or hobby, that gets you up in the morning. I mean, I train with a guy here, and there's a group of us that train at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. And that motivates me to get up in the mornings to go, because I know they're all going to be there and we have fun. And so I just really think that, community right now is super important. And for you to be saying that, a lot of these women, especially my listeners who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, there's this new, just gumption, this new get up and go, this like new aha moment that they're finally saying, I can do this. I'm an online fitness and nutrition coach too. And I have these women reaching out to me right now who are in their 60s, who have never competed before, but they want to compete now. And I'm just so joyful to be able to help them and, help them achieve their goals, because it's never too late to start anything new. It doesn't have to be sport related. It can be if you want to become a writer, if you want to learn how to sew. I mean, anything. And if there's a hobby or something that you're interested in, the internet now, social media, there's a Facebook group for everything. And all of a sudden now you have instant community and instant friends. And I have met women from all over the world, not only on this podcast, but through different Facebook communities where, for example, a good friend of mine now, and she lives in Tokyo, but she is French and she was living in Paris, and we were in the same Facebook group. And I said, well, I'm a flight attendant, and when I come to Paris for an overnight, we'll get together. And we did. And yeah, so it was just so fun. So I'm just, this time, in our lives where, community is so important, and that women our age now are thriving, and they're not letting their age interfere in their goals and their dreams and their second chapter. And for me, I'm on Helen 3.0. So my third chapter, I mean, I'm 64 and my life just keeps getting better and better. And, I would never, ever want to go back to my 20s or 30s. I was a train wreck back then. So I'm, and life just keeps getting better. And I'm just so thrilled to see these women and society being accepting, and women stepping out of their, comfort zone and jumping, because, I always say jump and the net will appear. And I think Absolutely. that if we had more knowledge about, facial recognition, like I understand this, that hit me on the head. I'm a giver, and I've been in relationships with men where I like gave and gave and gave and hardly got anything in return. And looking back now, I thought, well, why should I have expected anything? Because I was giving so much. They were like, this is great. I don't need to do anything, So I totally understand that. And I think there's so many misconceptions out there about relationships. And if we can get on the same page as far as understanding, even just through facial recognition, I think relationships in general would be a lot better, not only in marriages, but in friendships, within families. I mean, everything.
Absolutely. I agree. And I know, and you have those beautiful rounded eyebrows, which talk about community from the beginning, which I love. But, and I love that you're doing this, and I love this podcast, and I'm so honored to be part of it, because that is the thing that we have to really understand in this society, is that its age is irrelevant, but the face that you see looking back to you is the most relevant, because that face tells you where you're sitting, how you're feeling, how you're, thinking about yourself and your life, and what is possible for you. I had a client just this week tell me that once she understood what her face in the mirror said, it gave her permission to be herself, because then she said, oh, I don't, this wrinkle doesn't mean what I thought it meant. It's not something that I'm ashamed of anymore. She actually had a wrinkle in in her forehead that spoke to having to make her own way and step into her own power and bless her own power. And she always thought, oh, I just want to cover this up. But now every time she sees it in the mirror, she's like, that means I'm doing this by myself and I'm doing a good job and I've overcome. And so when we can see ourselves in a different way, then anything is possible. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter how old you are. It just matters how much you recognize that face in the mirror, whether it's a woman's face or a man's face, and what is possible there and where you're holding yourself back and where you can stop. And, that's it.
Right. And then, as far as once you make that decision to take that step, and then you find a community of like-minded people to cheer you along and help hold you accountable for succeeding, that makes all the difference too, because all of us, we're going to probably fail at some point in our endeavors. I know I have plenty of times, but I've had my friends there to help raise me back up. Or if I'm sulking and I'm, acting like a bitch, then they're going to call me out on that too, and just say, "Yeah, come on now, you need to stop acting this way." And so I appreciate that also too. So I just think what you're doing is fascinating, and it could really improve the world in general if we would all take the time to be more invested in facial expression, body language, and just not only on an individual level, but on a worldwide level. I think the world would be a much better place for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I know for a fact that you have a ton of things as far as your social media, and you have a YouTube channel, a website, but what kind of courses do you offer if someone is interested and wants to come chat with you?
Yeah, absolutely. 3 times a year, I run a course called Holistic Human Understanding, and that is a full facial intelligence, energetics course that I teach so that you get to understand the face and the energetics of the face from a personality perspective, a health perspective, of time of life perspective. So the next one is running in February or early March. So if that is something that you're interested in, then you can always reach out to me and you can get on the waiting list for that. Coming up in 2022, I will be doing a relationship mastermind. So if anybody's interested in that, but we haven't set the dates for that yet. So that is coming as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Michelle, it's almost been an hour that we've been chatting. This has been so fascinating. It's like my mind's just running a mile, 10,000 miles a minute here. But this has been great. I'm so happy that we were able to connect. I just thought this was a fascinating subject. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to chat. If people want to get a hold of you on social media or through your website, can you give us that info too?
Yeah, you can go to michellebutt.com. You can book a connection call there. I'm always happy to chat with people. Or you can find me on Instagram, the Facial Intelligence Coach. I'm there as well. And every Friday, I do a little web series. It's on Facebook and it's also on YouTube, and it's called Face Fact Friday. And so I'll read some famous faces or do some face facts. So this Friday, there's actually 2 that I'm reading. So you can get an idea as to what faces, like when you can see a face and what information is there, and just have some fun with that. So.
And that's on your YouTube channel?
Yes. And the YouTube is Michelle Butt.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you spell your last name Butt?
Butt. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much. I know you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, so I'm not going to say, I think your Thanksgiving is already passed, right?
Yeah, it was. But you can say happy birthday, because it'll be my birthday on Black Friday. So
that's right. Oh my gosh. So you can go shopping.
There you go. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I hope you have a great holiday season, and thank you so much for joining us and really kind of opening up our eyes to this really, really fascinating subject. I think I'll definitely make sure that all your information is put on the podcast when it comes out in a couple of weeks. And hopefully you'll get some new clients out of this.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And I love the work that you're doing. And I think this is so important. And I'm always open to sharing the beauty of your face with anyone who feels like they just need to know who they really are.
Thank you. All right. Take care. Bye. I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation that Michelle and I had. Just fascinating. I'd love to be able to carve out some time and really dive a little bit deeper into facial expressions, facial intelligence, and body language. That would really help my conversations and my encounters, I think, on a much higher level. A couple of takeaways. For me, facial expressions are the universal language of emotion, and learning to decode facial expressions is like granting yourself a superpower. Facial expressions and body language refers to the nonverbal signals that we use to communicate. And according to experts, these nonverbal signals make up a huge part of our daily communication. From our facial expressions to our body movements, the things that we don't say can still convey volumes of information. Now, the face and its expressions are the windows to the soul, if you know how to read them. The good news is we can tell a lot about someone instantly by their face. And Michelle talks about how facial readings are really getting to know a person on a deeper level, and that there are 3 things the face tells us. Number 1, personality. Number 2, the time of life that we are in. And number 3, potential health ailments. All those wrinkles on our faces, well, they're there for a reason. So the next time you have a new encounter with a new friend, check out the shape of their face, their facial features, their eyebrows, their body language. They're all significant and can tell you a lot of things even before you start a conversation. If you'd like to learn more about facial intelligence, please reach out to Michelle. You can find her. She does have a website. It's michellebutt.com, MICHELLEBUTT.com. She's on Instagram at the Facial Intelligence Coach. She's on Facebook at Face Value, ATFACEVALU. She's on LinkedIn at Michelle-Butt, and she also has a YouTube channel too. And if you'd like to reach me, you'll find me at ageisirrelevant.com, or you can reach out to me through email at helen@ageisirrelevant.com. If you'd like this podcast and you'd like my other podcast, it would be great if you could go to iTunes and leave me a 5-star review. That would be amazing. I love spreading this kind of joy and all this knowledge and information to fellow pro-agers. And I want everyone to have a great holiday season and look forward to catching up with you after the first of the new year. And please don't ever forget, in whatever you do, that age truly is irrelevant. Take care.